I had sent you my edits,
We're live.
but now I'm glad I didn't, since you sent a new draft.
Right, and what I'm going to do, Sheila, is something that my English teachers always taught me and I never learned was I'm going to try to do an outline of the report. And I'll send that to you and Fred quickly. I have an outline in my head, but that doesn't mean that it's an outline that you all agree to. Are we supposed to be on now? We are live. All right. Let me call the Finance Committee meeting for May 8th to order. All members are present and accounted for. We need to have a motion to approve the agenda, which is quite generic.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The agenda is approved. There are no minutes because of the power failures. All of Takia's work got wiped out for the recording all of our votes, which does bring us to the first thing that I wanted to talk about today. I think we need to do any cleanup votes for the committee so that we have that part of our work finished. A thing that I do not think we voted on, and I just saw some email from Lynn this morning, is I don't know that we've taken a final vote on the community grants. I don't know that we've taken, in my mind, we kind of have taken a final vote on the department appropriations because they're part of Appendix A, I believe it is, and we agreed to that.
Mr. Chair, we did not take a position on Section A, which includes Appendix A. We did not.
So that we need to do whatever we're going to do to finalize a vote on the ordinance. I think that we have not gotten, we've decided to not take a position on Section 1, and I think everything else is okay. Section 23, we have a split vote. That's the tax and property tax and personal tax section. Everything else, I think we had a unanimous vote on. I don't know whether you know.
No.
Right. So we need to clean.
I have all the notes. Section 14, it was a 2-3 vote. Section 19, 2-3 vote. Section 20, 2-3 vote.
All right, wait a minute. Let me. Section
20. Section 14.
14, which is the transportation fund?
Mm-hmm.
That was a 2-3 vote?
Yes, it was.
About a 2-1 vote.
Yeah, 2-1 vote. Yeah. All right.
Don't give us 5 people.
Okay, you're right. You're right.
All right, 14.
14, 19.
19 is
which is the fleet replacement fund.
Right. 23 was.
No, 20, which was the fleet operation fund.
Is the one going to write a short discussion of the no vote?
Is what?
Don't know.
Fred, are you on these
write
ones?
a short, if we were in a court of law, I would say dissenting opinion.
Right, okay. And then go on, Sheila.
Section 21, we took no position on. That's Appendix C. And then
Which
going
is
over
what? Wait, what's Appendix C?
Revenue and appropriations chart.
And that was the one where I have a correction to, because Alderwoman Finlayson noted that they didn't agree to the expenditures, and we've got to correct the 2 amounts shown there.
So we can come back to that one then, if we want to revisit it, and I don't know.
We've also got to talk about the hiring freeze.
Can we go through this legislation before we go on?
So,
Ross, you there?
appendix, yeah. Hello?
Okay, the next one is section 26.
What about 23? Oh, no, it is 26, yes. 2-1.
And the last one is section 29.
What did we not, we didn't vote on 29?
We did vote, but Alderman Payon voted no.
Oh. Okay.
I mean, you can ask him. But that was it. Okay. And I have a question mark besides 26. Section 25. I don't have it checked that we took a vote on it. That's,
That was when we had the discussion with Carrie, and I thought we decided that this language was fine, that by mentioning the city council, it was subsuming mentioning the finance committee and the city council finance committee processes.
okay, well, we didn't take an official vote on that one. So
Okay.
we want to go
All right.
back and address that. And that's it.
All right. So, can we dispatch section 25 now by taking a vote?
Sure.
So I would entertain a motion to recommend approval of section 25 to the city council.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
This is for the capital budget.
This is in the ordinance. No, this is in the ordinance 1620.
Section 25, which does speak to the capital budget and capital improvement program.
Yeah, I'll vote for that.
All right. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. The unfinished business in the ordinance is section 1. Did we take a vote on Appendix A, which includes the sticking points from section 1, if I'm correct in my understanding? These are the department by department appropriation budgets. I would argue that by approving Appendix A, it is in effect taking a vote on each of the departments in response to their presentations to us. So we may want to take a minute to decide whether we are comfortable with that. The other way to do it is to go through department by department in the order that they made their presentations to us using the whatever the system is, performance
measures.
Yeah, right. I think it's easier to do it in the legislation. I don't know what your thoughts are, though.
Mr. Chair, we had this discussion at length yesterday about the fact that if we approve or give a favorable for section 1, that will be inclusive of the postponement of the COLAs to the employees. And for
Right.
that reason, I requested that we not take a position
All right, so we
on
need to
section
have
1.
section 1, right, you're correct. But does that carry over to not taking a position on Appendix A?
Oh. Appendix A is inclusive of, and City Manager Gerald, correct me if I'm wrong, Appendix A is inclusive of all of the reductions that are outlined in your, on your list. Is that correct?
That's correct. They were incorporated. into that.
Okay. So if we approve Appendix A, then we are approving the delay of COLAs without the benefit of bargaining. And may I ask, are we back at the bargaining table yet?
We are not. No, they've asked. Mike, do you want to respond to that since we are attempting to, but they've asked for a postponement until they see how the council deals with the budget.
So we're between a rock and a hard place because we're not going to make a decision, from what I heard from my colleague yesterday, until until bargaining is finished, and they're saying they're not going to make a decision until they hear from us. Is that correct?
And remember that if you approve the budget as proposed and we are not able to reach an agreement, then we're going to have to find savings somewhere else. I mean, we can't, based on the budget at this time, force it down their throats. They're going to need to agree with that, and if they don't, then there'll have to be other savings done. Or other things that we talked about yesterday.
I don't see how either the finance committee or the council can approve the budget with this and whatever the status of the 401A is. So we are in a position where we won't approve a budget because we can't reach a resolution.
No, I don't think that's correct. I think that there's a lot in the budget that is not 100% certain. A lot of it's projections. You approve the budget, and that tells us what the appropriation authority is, and we have to operate the city over the next year within that appropriation. So there's nothing in there that says that that the COLA is required. I don't think you'll find that anywhere other than that one explanatory list of where we found some reductions. You won't find that anywhere else that you're approving that. What you're approving is the appropriation, and we have to live within that appropriation. There's, like I said, there's a lot of other uncertainty associated with that. Some things will be, right spot on with our projections. Some things will not, but we adjust and we have to live within the budget that's appropriated by council.
David, please understand our reticence to moving forward. We have been, and I'm going to say burned any number of times because we weren't specific enough in our request and guidance. And so knowing that these cuts are already in Appendix A, and if we approve Appendix A, then we are in essence approving everything that's in there. And that's the message that will be sent. And I don't think that's the message I want sent. So, if there is some way to be assured that by approving this, it only means that the unions will be back at the table and discussions and efforts will be made to fill the void that may be created. I didn't hear an interest in doing that. I mean, I heard what you just said, but I heard our discussions yesterday. I heard the finance director's discussions. It makes me nervous. So that's
let me let Fred in. Let me let Fred in. Fred, go ahead, and then I would like to respond to.
While we're still talking about the COLAs being delayed, I would make a motion that we request all exempt employees who make over $100,000 to take a 5% pay cut to go along with delaying the rank and file union raises for the same period of time, I might add.
Thank you. So now we're back to square one on recasting the whole budget.
Expect it to pass, by the way.
Following your line of
motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'd like to second it for the sake of discussion. I'll second it for the sake of discussion.
All right. So now we have a motion on the table, and the motion is, please say it again, Fred.
To request, and that's all I will do is request that all exempt employees making over $100,000 a year agree to a 5% pay cut until January 1st.
So my immediate request is to the city attorney, because a lot of those people are in the bargaining unit. And certainly everyone is covered along with the bargaining unit, most favored nation, or whatever we call that term. So, and as a request, I don't think it has any meaning. If we're going to
That'll save us money.
We want to amend the budget, but I don't think we can do that. And who knows what the impact of that is. It's going to be huge. Let me let Ellie and Sheila, you wanted to talk.
No, there are only 30 people.
I just have a question, and my question is how much that will reap if that were to be approved.
Have to be calculated.
I
Well,
don't
maybe it's a
have
question for Jody.
You have to look at everybody who earns $100,000. Are we only taking a 5% cut of their whole salary, or of the amount over 100,000? All right, Ellie wanted to speak. And then I do need to hear from the city attorney.
Can we have Jody answer the question first before we go outside the committee?
Well,
I asked the question of Jody.
I would have to look and see who the people are and what the totals are before I can give you a 5% number of anything. And that would take a bit of time. So I can't tell you right off the top of my head right now how much that would be.
Okay, thank you.
It would also be interesting to know how that would compare to the size of deferring COLA and deferring the 401A payments. I bet it would be more, but it'd be interesting.
And I can tell you that the 14 people in that plan are already getting a 7% decrease in their pay package by taking those 401A contributions away. So that's a double whammy on those people.
Let's hear from the city attorney next, please, and then Ellie, I'll recognize you next.
Yeah, thank you. No problem.
Hi. Good morning. I would caution that the committee, as a subset of the council, has a specific line of authority, and you can recommend all that you will recommend. However, with respect to a 5% cut, we need to do a full legal analysis of what that means. It's unclear in the motion, one, what a request is of a committee. Two, what indeed is 5%. Three, what indeed is agreed with. So those terms would all have to be ferreted out, and I'm not so clear that the motion is one that's allowable by a committee to the council, because that's who you're requesting it of, versus what I think is in your authority is to recommend to the council first for the council's consideration. But I think we need to do a legal analysis as well on all of the pieces that I just talked about to be able to present to you whether a 5% agreed to pay cut for a certain segment of folks at a number range is even authorized or allowable by the full council as we're currently talking about it in the context of a budget discussion.
I agree with that last point wholeheartedly. I think I understand the nature of the motivation for the offer, and it's similar to what City Manager Gerald has said, that we're looking for equal shares of reductions, or more or less equal shares of reduction, compensation to 70% or more of the budget. And while we're taking cuts elsewhere in the budget, we're also looking to affect compensation, as is happening all over the nation. So I understand the motivation. I think that there's some real legal problems of us or the council of being able to do that by fiat. But
R2D2.
let's let Ellie speak, and then I see
Yeah.
that Dewan join us, so he might want to say something too.
Yeah, I mentioned this a couple of days ago, and I really want you to consider it. And it is in line with what the city manager just said. There's a lot of line items in our budget that are not absolutes. It looks like right now you're trying to find a deduct as an absolute in case we don't include this COLA deferment. So I simply suggest or recommend that you put in parentheses, subject to union negotiations, and call it a day. That's my take. Thank you.
I'm with you, Ellie. I think that's where I'm inclined to go. But Duan, did you have something? Are you up to speed on what we're talking about?
Sorry, I got in late, so I'm not.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to Fred, and then I'd like to say another piece on this as well.
Look, I think this is a way of showing the union that we're serious. And I think if, in fact, the exempt employees, and I thought there were 31 of them, are willing to take this 5% pay cut, or most of them are willing to take it, then, you know, they don't really have much of a hat, much to hang their hat on when it comes to the 6%. I'm just looking to save money. That's
well, I got you. I see an exempt employee, two exempt employees with their hands up. I would like to get a word in, but I would want to hear from Mike and David first.
Just a quick technical point here, because all of the exempt and non-exempt are all on the same pay plan that's approved by the council. So I'm not sure technically how we would cut the pay plan by 5% just for the exempt and not for the non-exempt. Many of whom are in the same pay range, but so I guess we'd have a second pay plan for those exempt employees that are over 100,000 that would be taking the 5% reduction. I'm just thinking technically, how would we even work this? Because everybody's on the same pay plan. It's just higher levels that we're talking about here, but it's the same pay plan. So to have a separate pay plan for the exempt over $100,000 is what I think what we're talking about here with the 5% cut for those employees.
Let me.
Well, I just wanted to.
Fred, I wanted to hear from the city attorney. I'll go to you, and then I would like to get a chance to say something.
Yes, yes, sir. A quick point on labor negotiations. I would caution that your statements in the context of this discussion put us in the position of negotiating against ourselves at this point. And so unless we go back into executive session, labor strategy and negotiation strategy in an open forum opens us up to a category of labor negotiations that probably the city manager doesn't want to be in. So at this phase, I would say that the authority of the committee at this point is to recommend what it will to the full council. We'll be prepared to, in closed session, executive session, discuss labor strategy. But the discussion of labor strategy in this open session hampers our ability to even go into negotiations in a fair way, because we just don't have all the tools available to us to make what would be in essence in these executive decisions based on negotiation. Thank you.
So Sheila, then Fred, then me, then Dewan.
Well, I hate to put another wrinkle in this, but there is another option. And I understand the line drawn between negotiating here and setting policy. And I'm talking about policy. In the summary of proposed reductions, the total for the COLA, the deferment of the COLA till January 1 is $689,000. $331,000 of that is for non-represented and management employees. So I'm just throwing this out as another option, which will reduce by almost half, or a little more than half, I guess, what we would have to recover if we decided to take that out of the list of deductions. And we wouldn't have to get into the creation of another plan. And by the way, all along, we've been told that this is only until January. So this is a temporary response to fill the void, not a long-term. So just another option that we need to address. And maybe that'll speak to Fred's issue. Instead of doing straight 5%, what if we just did the non-represented and the management COLAs?
Fred,
Done.
and then me, and then Dewan.
All right. Well, I said exempt employees only, basically, because I didn't want there to be union, have to get permission from the union, basically, to do that. And as far as I know, that's what we would have to do if I tried to get the 5% from anybody else. The salaries that I've looked at are really quite good by and large, and I'm all for that, having been a government employee. But plain and simple, I'm looking to save money. I think my suggestion earlier was that I think it's good for the rank and file to know that we're everybody. The crunch is on everybody, not just on union members or the lower end people in our pay scale. I really don't have a lot more to say. The rest of my motion speaks for itself. I don't have a figure. I've got, some estimates in my head, but that's it. I mean, if it goes, but my motion goes down, it goes down. But I think it's I think it's a good idea. I think it'll save money, and that's it.
My turn. And I will get to you next one. I would remind the committee that all we're doing is making recommendations to the council for their consideration. I take, Fred, your motion in the spirit that it is letting the council know that we believe in one way or another there needs to be some reduction in pay in addition to reductions in the other 30% of the budget. I take the spirit of Ellie's motion, and that is in the spirit of what David said, which is the council will be approving an appropriation. Part of that appropriation has some things that will need to be negotiated and figured out. The COLAs and the 401As are going to have to be figured out. If there's not a fix for that, then there's going to have to be an adjustment to the budget elsewhere to meet the appropriation. I'm assuming that the administration will come back and propose likely adjustments to pay elsewhere. But the overall intent of this reduction in appropriation is to be an across the board reduction. And that means reducing pay as well. How we get there is really up to the administration after the budget is passed. And so while I really don't like those two loose ends, I'm not sure we have the power to solve them. I take what the city attorney has said to us, which we're getting borderline into negotiating territory, which really not sure we have a ability to be in the first place, but secondly, ought to be done in closed session. So that's what I have to say. I'll turn it over to Duan and then whoever else wants to.
Hey, sorry. I'm glad that we're finally talking about this, and it's not the other way around on some of the staff. I'm a big fan of this. I support it wholeheartedly once you guys recommend it to the council. And as it's been mentioned, it's not permanent. it'll be what, 6 months of 5% pay cut. I'm glad that it's at 5 because I was originally gonna go back to 2, not to make enemies, but I like 5. It's secure, and I think that by doing it with the directors and the exempt staff, it shows that the leaders are taking this serious. Like I mentioned at the last meeting that we had, the Prime Minister of New Zealand took a voluntary 20% pay cut throughout the COVID-19 crisis. So this is, it's just happening all around, all across the world. People are stepping up to the time. So I'm grateful that we're having.
And your point is that New Zealand is near Australia and Gavin is from Australia. Committee, I think we're on section 1 of the ordinance, and I'm presuming here on Appendix A, what we're really saying is 2 things. One, we cannot come to a recommendation on those, but we are looking for ways that that the administration can find reductions in pay that are in the order of magnitude that the COLA and the 401A reductions are in. If that's where we are collectively, I would suggest that we so note that when we discuss our votes on the legislation, we note that when we discuss section 1, we note that when we discuss Appendix A. If there are things that trickle over into any of these other appendices, we can discuss it there. But I don't see how we can possibly we have no idea what the order of magnitude of that 5% cut. We have no idea what the legal aspects of that are. I think the city attorney is cautioning us. So I think unless there is a sense on the committee that there is no desire to have any cuts in pay for staff, however it occurs, I think that we can take a no position vote on these with the recommendations that this is all subject to negotiation. It's an appropriation. It's an appropriation that the administration is going to have to meet, and we're presuming that the administration will continue with negotiations and or other vehicles to meet the amount of these 2 reductions, the 689 and the 160. And that's it. We don't have a role other than that. But I put that to the committee.
If I might, Mr. Chair, as I've said before, the 160 is not what's giving me heartburn. It's the 689. And if the unions agree, I'm good. My big concern is that we're kicking this can down the road, knowing perfectly well that we're not going to be able to live up to this obligation in the future years. Okay? So we need to stop saying that we will. This is not, if we agree to this now, I am positive it will be a permanent reduction in salaries, at least for the near future. So we have an opportunity.
I think it will. I think that's the intent, that it be a permanent reduction.
Well, but that's not what they're saying.
When you don't get that pay for 6 months, you're never getting that back. So it is intended to be a permanent reduction in that amount for 6 months. And David Gerald has already told us that in the negotiations are also looking in out years. We're all having the feeling that fiscal 22 is going to be worse than this year. And so there's going to be more all over the country. Every worker is taking a reduction of some kind, a reduction in take-home pay, a reduction in days of work through furloughs. No one is escaping this. And I don't
Then we should stop. Then
we should either.
I'm sorry, but we should now stop saying this is a deferral until January, because it's not. And that's my big concern. You want to say January, but we know that in January, we're not going to be in a better place than we are now. Okay? We know that there are monies coming in, and the unions know this. There are monies coming into this city right now from the feds that say dollars can be used for police and fire. But we're not having that discussion for some reason. Okay? If you look at one of the coronavirus stimulus packages that we received or will receive through the Treasurer Secretary, monies can be used for public safety. We're not having that discussion. Okay?
Sheila, if I could, that is separate from this. We're talking about the appropriation budget. If there's a way.
No, excuse me, Mr. Chair,
excuse me. For public safety.
I had the floor. I thought I had the floor.
Go ahead.
I get cut off when we don't like what I'm saying, okay? And this is exactly what we're talking about. We're trying to fill this gap. We have opportunities to do it if we choose. If we choose. I'm finished.
All right. I think Fred, I'll get to you in a second. We're talking about an across-the-board reduction. There are ways for public safety in other venues to be made good and bonuses out of the CONID monies that may be coming. That is not available to people in public works or elsewhere. The point is that we are saying that in order to strike this budget, we have to have reductions in pay across the board, whether it's public safety people or not, because this COLA is across the board. And what the administration through the city manager is saying is, if we can't get it one way, they'll have to get it another way. But the places they're going to look, and this is the spirit of Fred's motion as well, is in pay. It is coming out of pay. There is no avoiding that in climate and in the climate of the coming years. And there's no avoiding it elsewhere in the whole country, the whole world. So to think that we're not going to have some kind of reductions in pay, you've heard Dewan favor that. I know that others on the council are favoring it. We're just not going to shelter it. There may be ways that we can come back and help certain segments of our workforce in the people who are exposed directly to the virus, and that's great. I'm happy about that. But that's not what this is about. This is about striking an appropriations budget that has balanced cuts across all of the different appropriation amounts, including the big amount, which is compensation. Fred, you had your hand up patiently.
I did, and then I got impatient. No, I think that these are exempt employees, and to be honest, I mean, I don't really like putting it in these terms, but we can do what we want with them almost any time we want with them, be it good, be it bad. We could give them raises if we wanted to, if we had the money. Well, they're exempt. I mean, they're not subject to anything other than unconstitutional acts on our part. And I think that, to say that this is permanent, no, it's 6 months. We'll cross that bridge in January. We all know that things don't look good, but we don't know for sure where we're going to be in January. Maybe this COVID money will take care of a lot of our extra expenses. I think it can be used for almost anything we can show is related to the COVID-19 crisis. And that may even include things like parking fund, loss of other revenues that we have. And it may not be a difficult thing to give them a raise in pay. I mean, give them back that money in January. I don't know. Look, I'm just looking to save money, period. Either we can or we can't. As you said, there's another day to this. I can argue this when it comes to the council as a whole. And, that's it, plain and simple. I'm not going to repeat myself.
Dewan had his hand up, then Sheila, then me.
So I just wanted clarification, Sheila. I think I get where you're going, and I would tend to agree if it meant that we didn't have to cut of the money that we are to get out of the county's $1 million from COVID relief. We could use some of that, a portion of that 600, whatever the number is, to fill the void.
From what I read from the Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, you can use those funds. And I'm looking for my notes where I wrote down because I didn't keep the article. Can be used for anything that's related as it relates to public safety, police and fire. So that means to me that we could use some of that, however millions of dollars we're going to get, to fill this void. Okay, and granted, police and fire make up almost half of that 689,000. There's only less than 100,000 are for the ASME locals. About 80,000 for ASME locals. So that means the other 500 plus, well, that's not true. 198 and 82, which is 250, almost 300,000 of that could potentially be used from the COVID-19 money. Okay. We don't know how many under the non-represented would fit into those categories of public safety. So that would leave a smaller hole in the budget for us to fill. So I think based on what I've read, we can use that.
Let me go to the city attorney at this point because I really do think we're straying, but Mr. City Attorney.
Yes, and I've had to change my microphone. Takia, can you hear me better? Oh, not better? Better? Okay. Some people are hearing me better. But anyway, I'll make this quick. I think I want to caution you here with interpreting language from various parts of the government. What we're finding at the federal and state level is that there's a lot of interpretation going on that hasn't all been sorted out. And we'd like the opportunity before minds are made up on what a particular word means in a statement that the Office of Law gets a chance to kind of chew on it and talk to our partners at the federal and state level. Because there's a lot of confusion about what is when it comes to these kinds of things. And some of it is turning out to be a moving target. So I would just caution us setting our flag on one particular definition of anything with respect to these things in another.
So what exactly, and this is the second part of the question that I was asking originally. So then what exactly would the funds be used for? You say COVID relief. I mean, as Fred mentioned, that's such a broad term. And to me, if I be honest on what I feel like there is, what we as a council would like to see happen with the COVID relief money, and then what staff and administration would like to see what happen with the COVID relief money. Is that taking place? Is that why we're trying to figure out these words and balance on what we can and cannot do with it?
Yes, we're doing that now because there is an indication that there is some additional money coming to the state, to the county, and potentially to the city. And we're trying to figure out how best to catalog and categorize these funds so that when we make our application for the money, that it can be released and we get to keep whatever we ask for. Right now, this is really still being thought out. We're reading words on orders and edicts just like yourselves and trying to determine through additional interpretation from these departments what they mean. And there is some confusion and we're trying to get it unconfused, if you will.
At this point, I'd like to ask Takia if you could, or Fred, if you could repeat the motion. And then I think I want to call the question.
I had a question.
So the motion is to request that all exempt employees making over $100,000 a year take a 5% pay reduction until January 1st, 2021.
I really couldn't hear that. I think you need the new microphone.
The request made by Alderman Payon is to request that all exempt employees making over $100,000 a year take a 5% pay reduction until January 1st, 2021.
I think that is something that might be appropriate as a recommendation possibly in the report, but I'm not comfortable in supporting that with my vote at this time. Sheila, unless you had something else, I'd really like to call the question.
I was going to ask if it was inclusive of exempt, was it only for exempt employees? But I think with Takia's reading it, it clarified it for me.
So at this point, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
No.
Motion fails. We're still now left with what we're doing with the ordinance. We already have taken a position on what we're doing with the ordinance for section 1, which we may come back to. We do need to take action on the appendices, which are incorporated in the legislation in verbiage, but also by virtue of these schedules at the end of the legislation. So I would entertain a motion or discussion about Appendix A, which we know subsumes both the COLAs and the 401A.
Mr. Chair, isn't that what we have been discussing for the last 30 minutes?
I understand
that's
that.
where we started.
Is there a motion to do anything with that discussion?
My concern is that we approve these sections and they're inclusive of the appropriate appendix. So why would we approve the appendix separately? Or is this just a way to get out of approving section 1?
It's not a way of
the
getting,
appendix instead.
We have to approve the ordinance in its entirety. We've gone through section by section. We have not taken action on the appendices. We've noted that the Appendix A has elements of section 1. And so if we're going to complete the work on the ordinance and then come up with an overall recommendation on the ordinance, it seems to me, now it's up to the committee, that we need to take up the 3 appendices. The city attorney has his hand up.
Yes, sir. I think in voting for section 1, if you vote for section 1, it includes the appendix. I'm not sure that it would be appropriate at this time or legal to vote for the appendix separate from the ordinance. It's all one thing.
We have approved, for example, section 4, which is inclusive of appendix B. So when we approved that, we approved section the appendix B. So I think I agree with the city attorney. We just did
right.
That.
The appendix is really the appendix is a picture of 1. You can take 1. The appendix is incorporated in it. So when you approve 1 or recommend approval by the council for section 1, it includes the description of this map and where it will go. I don't think you can separate them and vote for 1. And you definitely can't vote for the appendix and carry forward with the section.
So I stand corrected because we also have approved section 21, which is appendices C, and we have approved section 24, which is appendices D. So we don't need to do anything with the appendices. So we now have.
Mr. Chair, we did not vote on section 21.
All right. I thought we had.
That's the one with the mistake in the grants revenue. And we have an amendment we're going to have to make to those line items.
Okay. Can you tell us what that is?
So as you look at Appendix C, and you look at the grants revenue, the grants fund section,
Yes,
give you the amounts that should be there.
that's the 6.3.
Yes, so the total of the grants fund should be 6306206.
Would you repeat that, please?
The total should be 6306206.
All right. So
The
can I have,
top number, the revenue number, we're all looking at Appendix C, right?
correct.
Yes.
Okay, the top number that says revenue should be 6051211.
Wait a minute. I'm not finding. Tell us what line number.
We're on line number 29. I'm reading you line 30.
Well, wait a minute. Line 30 is revenue of 4,494,700.
Yeah, that number should be what you see in the total there, 6,051,211.
Does the fund balance appropriation stay the same? No, it can't.
No, I'm going to give you that number now too. You ready?
Okay.
Line number 31, fund balance appropriated, should be 254,995.
All right, so
And
that's,
and what I told you before, line 32 is the total of those two, 6306206.
Okay. Got it.
And we'll be sending the Office of Law an amendment to draft to correct that.
Does that change the bottom line
No,
from?
no, we just had we had the revenues in the total line, and it didn't tie to those front schedules either. This didn't tie to what's up front in the budget book where we summarized the funds, so it was just a typo on our part.
Okay. Thank you.
and this also squares with, what is it? The table, the schedule on page 20, which is the revenues with supplemental. Trying to get back there.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does. You can compare the numbers directly there.
Ross, if you go to page 29, that subtotal, your page 29, that the subtotal total grant fund, 6306206.
And I'm looking at the page 20, which is the revenues plus use of available fund balance.
Yes,
The grants.
and you look at the grants line, Alderman Arnett, you will see those numbers that I just gave you. 6051211, 254,995, and 6306206.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, on page 29.
Page 20.
20.
I was,
Yeah, but I was talking about page.
No, you just said page 20, Ross.
I did, but Ellie said page 29. I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
But it's on page 20. It's on page 20, the fifth item down. And the numbers that Jody just gave us.
Well, the total of the 603, right?
But the other numbers also, the 651
Oh, I see.
and the
Coming across. Yeah,
254.
you're right. Oh, okay. So we're all square. So is there a motion from the Finance Committee to recognize these corrections?
So moved.
Yeah, second.
Right. All in favor of recommending recognition of these corrections to the council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. I would ask if there is a motion to recommend, well, we already have approved. Well, no, we have to go back to section 21, which is where this appendix C shows. Is there a recommendation is there a motion to recommend to the council approval of section 21 from the ordinance?
Mr. Chair, what did we just vote on? I thought that's
We
what we were
voted on
voting
a
on.
correction to the schedule. You said, I thought we had voted on section 21 previously. You said your notes indicate we had not. So I'm asking if we had not recommended approval of section 21, that we take a vote on that now.
Okay, I move that we recommend approval of section 21, anticipated revenues and appropriate fund balances, appendix C.
Is there a second?
Revenues, I'll second that.
All right. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of recommending approval of section 21 to the council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Sheila, you had a nice list of all of the things that were outstanding.
I
Section 1 was outstanding.
think we've done them all. I'm looking through my list now.
Takia, does that square with what you have, Takia?
Yes, except for, I'm confused as to how you left off with section 1. Because you said section 1 included community grants. So if you're not voting on section 1, then we have, was it community grants or departments? You're
Would you
muted.
repeat that, Kakia? You're kind of breaking up a little bit. I didn't understand.
So section 1, you guys have not voted on, correct? And you're muted,
Correct.
Ross. Section 1 also includes departments or community grants. Which one?
Section 1 also includes appendices A, which is the department by department appropriation level
Right.
schedule.
So then if you're not going to take a position on section 1, you have to go department by department and approve or not approve.
Why?
Every year you go through and approve each department. So if you're not going to do that this year, that's up to you in the committee, but you haven't done it and you haven't approved section 1. So are we not doing that this year?
I thought the chairman at the beginning of this meeting said that if there were no questions or concerns about the department budgets, then we would accept them as presented. Am I misunderstanding that, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, because the Schedule A, Attachment A, includes the things that the committee has yet gotten comfortable in terms of approving the levels with the deferrals. For me, technically only the deferral of, until we find out, the 401A payments. And the city attorney and the city HR director had promised us further details on that today. And the amount of money that would be equal to deferral for 6 months of the COLA or some other amount of money that is a pay reduction, my presumption being a pay reduction that is an across the board, affects all employees' pay by that amount collectively.
Section A is inclusive of community grants. That's on page 2 under non-allocated. 429.7.
And you guys
So we
have
don't
not
need to
voted on
pick that
that.
up.
You haven't voted on that
Pardon?
either.
We have not voted on community grants.
No.
I did send an
I'm looking for
updated,
community grants, and you're talking about an Appendix A?
yes, page 2. First, non-allocated, first list of items. It's the second one.
Right. And I don't think that number squares with the number in the latest schedule. I think the latest schedule we have for community grants is less than that by about $9,000.
Yes, it is.
So
Have you received the updated list from Lynn this morning? You're muted, Ross. Alderman Arnett.
I have to mute in order to be able to hear you because you're, for some reason, very garbled.
Sorry. There was an updated schedule sent this morning. Have you guys received it?
An updated what?
List.
I saw something from Lynn, but I haven't opened it to look at it.
Would you like for us to put it on the screen?
I would like the one that I created to be put on the screen also, because I don't know how this one differs. I'm concerned that staff would go back and change what I, as a committee representative, has done. I do know that there was a $9,000 difference, and my hope was that the committee members would decide how they wanted to allocate that fund, those monies. But we haven't gone back to discuss that.
I think the point is, as you're pointing out, Sheila, that if we don't take action on Appendix A, we do have to take a separate action on the community grants appropriation amount. I don't, let's see, I guess I can go on my iPad to see what Lynn sent us. I don't know if anybody else, here's community grant update. What does she say in the text?
I had asked for the committee and she sent the list of the committee. I don't know whether these numbers jive with the recommendation that I made. Looks like the bottom line might be the same. Is it 413? I don't want that.
David, is there a way we can get Lynn to talk to us about this? Yeah, the
Sure.
bottom line is different.
Yeah, I'll reach out to her to have her join the call.
All right.
Yeah, her
I don't know
bottom
why
line
they're different.
is different.
Yeah. I don't know why. I agree with you. I thought we had settled it, except for we don't equal the 429,700. In Lynn's, we equal 413,500. In yours, Sheila, we're at 420,500. I don't know what that $7,000 difference is. And I don't know that it was the intent of the committee to recommend less grants than the amount that was appropriated in the budget, which is 429,700.
Well, I can tell you why my number changed. Mine was at 413, if I remember correctly. And the committee added 500 to the winter relief. And I'm trying to think of what else we added. Brendan Sailing, I think we added 2,000. And I'm going from memory here. I know we reduced Film Festival from 20 to 15, but we added something else. And Fred, do you recall or Ross, do you recall what we added? But the committee made some additions. Excuse me.
No.
I have the old sheets. I can go back and look, but the committee made some changes. And I can't remember. Takia, do you have any recollection or any notes on?
Yes, but I don't have them right in front of me, but if you give me a second, I can find it.
All right, but it is the sense of the committee, I mean, it's my sense to the committee that we either need to approve independently this community grant schedule. We need to find out what the differences in the numbers are and why they're less than the amount planned to be appropriated for this. I'll get to you in a second, Fred.
Thank you.
So we either need to have a second motion to deal with the community grant schedule, or I don't know what we do. We can approve it in attachment A, but otherwise we're going to have to prove it independently. Yes, Fred.
Do we know the names of the 3 groups we gave money to who didn't even apply for the money?
Well, I can speak to one of them, and that is the Community Action Agency's job program. And they are convinced that they did make application for their jobs program. There's no question about, or no one knows what happened, but they did make their annual request for $2,000 for summer jobs. The film festival did not make a request, but they always do, and they come back to us in the 11th hour to, as you all have said. And so I put their 15,000 in because we know that that's going to be an expense that's going to come. So I can speak to those 2. I don't recall.
Compass Rose.
The other one was the Brendan Sailing, which I had never heard of, but you all spoke to that when we had this discussion and insisted that we add it, so we added it.
There was a theater too.
Compass Rose.
Oh, Compass Rose, correct. And that's another one that I'm very familiar with, and that's going to come to us. And then we changed the Housing Authority inspection amount from 80,000 to 72,000. So that's the bulk.
And that also reduced the total appropriation.
Yes. So, Mr. Chair, I would recommend that we approve the 429.7 and that we work out the details, the specifics by Monday. I mean, we can figure it out and you all can tell me what you want changed on this sheet. But my sheet has $420,500.
Right, and I think the appropriated amount, if I correct City Finance Director Jody, the 429,700 has to go down by $8,000 if we're taking the 8,000 out of the 80,000 to move HACA down to 70,000.
Yes, the list that they created should be $80,000 less than the HACA, or the HACA may be on that list with 80,000 in it, but that 429, hold on just a second. The 429,700 includes the 80,000.
But if you recall, Jody, I checked with the director and the amount for this year is not going to be 80,000. It's going to be 72,000 because Newtown is offline.
Right. And I said that that's not $8,000 we can pay out in cash to another entity. So we just wouldn't redistribute it. Maybe we add that number, it's going to be $8,000 less than. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So that's why it's less than the 429. It's going to be 420 something.
It's 421,700.
We're going to have to amend Appendix A to cut that amount down. And then I'll have to adjust the
So is it nowhere on paper that we pay that 80,000? I mean, the 72,000, or and I know we don't pay it. I know but where is it on paper, that amount for those inspections? I mean, could it stay here knowing that it's really not money transferring hands?
Yes. That's the second thought I had. We can leave it here and just not go as high as the 80,000. We can leave it as.
So, Fred?
Yes. I would move that we delete the Film Fest, the Brendan Sailing, and the Compass Rose I mean, you try explaining to your constituents how the city gave away money to people that didn't even ask for it. The film festival, I understand that they just had it. I think it was in April, and they're probably busy doing other things. But we've told them time and time again, don't come in at the last minute anymore. This is their opportunity to let us know ahead of time what they think they need. I, for one, am tired of this because we've told them that you can't come in here at the last minute unless it's an absolute emergency. And none of them have been absolute emergencies. It was their emergency because they forgot to apply for the money they asked earlier. The other two, Brendan Sailing, I don't know much about. I think maybe that's part of the Irish Curragh Sailing. I'm not sure. I just don't think we ought to be giving money away to people that don't even ask for it. The CAA jobs, I'm willing to perfectly well go along with what Sheila says, that somehow that got lost in the mix-up. And I do the same thing. If the other three said, "Oh yeah, we applied, we don't know what happened to it. You guys must have misplaced it," I'd give them the benefit of the doubt. But I'm not prepared to do that. I think that it's pretty outrageous that we're giving money away to people that didn't even bother applying. Also, one other thing, just a side note, a lot of these folks are repeat applicants, and we've given money to them before. Does anybody have any report on what they did with that money, or how they did with their goals for the money? I mean, the CAA, summer jobs program or jobs program, I assume some of these are job training. Do we know how many people successfully completed the course or got jobs or still have jobs at this point? I think the information we have is woefully inadequate in general, but the three that I really can't tolerate at all being among the group are the three that didn't even apply. Thank you.
So let me do some traffic management here. I'll get you, Ellie, and thank you for being on, Lynn. But Fred, you made a motion in all of that, and the motion was to delete 3 organizations. Is there a second for that motion? Hearing none, we'll move forward, but I will tell you, Fred, I'm mulling it over. I'm just not prepared to second it at this point. And frankly, I'm feeling a little bit frustrated because it almost feels like we're back at ground zero. I don't even know anymore. Sounds like we're back to a total appropriation amount of $429,700, which feels kind of squirrely to me. Why isn't it 430? But whatever, we have a level of precision here that is part of our, and I think that things are not adding up. Lynn is on now, and she gave us a new schedule today that adds up to $413,500. And I wonder, Sheila, I will recognize.
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry, Ross. I didn't change the amount. I just gave you notes, and that was, so those columns were the same as the ones that you got in the previous sheet. And I think the 413 is the recommendations that you all determined in your last meeting.
Okay, I can't open the notes, so I'm not sure what the notes say. Yeah, clearly. You're out in the open air.
No, yes, I'm out in the open air because I was at Food Friday, packing up the food for the 60 families we feed every week. So I'm at the rec center. That's where I am.
Okay, I want to recognize Sheila, then Ellie, and then we really do have to get back to the elephant on the table, folks, which is the ordinance.
The list.
Sheila, go ahead.
The list that I sent out was the updated list after the committee's discussion. I made additions as the committee had requested. And so that's why we came up with the new number of 425, I think it was. That's when we talked about, and Jody shared with us, the funding for the inspections for HACA. So we're going back and undoing what we had done. Lynn's list does not include the adjustments that we made as a committee. So what I sent to you, which was the bottom line, 425, was with the additions that the committee had requested. And we were supposed to go back and look at that list to see how we would like to reallocate the additional funds. So it's our document that, we may want to change again, but.
Let me let Ellie in. Dwan, did I see your hand up? No? All right, Ellie, please go ahead, and then let's see if we can't get this. Oh, you want to put your hand up now? All right, Ellie. Ellie, you're on mute.
I probably should be. I think this is a parking lot issue, but from observing this and from some constituents observing this, you have spent far too much time on this community grants. And I think that you have to review the process, because I'm reading an email from Lynn Farrow this morning, and it speaks of the committee that reviews these grants, and they clearly say they caution you all on making awards to organizations that did not submit a proposal. And my question is, why do we have this review committee when it's sort of negated by what you're doing? It's very confusing to the public. And again, it's a parking lot issue that you have spent far too much time on this, and we still don't know what list we're working off of. Is that a fair comment?
No.
Well, it's a comment for sure, but it's not fair, because this is what we do every year. There's always been a committee. The committee has always had a process, and the committee has always brought it. That has come to the finance committee, and the finance committee makes its changes and recommends to the council. I think you're right. We spend far too much time on community grants. That's been the practice of the council ever since I've been here, partly because so much of the rest of the budget is locked in most years. This year we have some loose ends that we're assiduously avoiding getting to, but.
So let me ask you this. Are we working off of the 9:20 a.m. list that Lynn Farrow sent this morning? Did you all read her email? I'm not defending any which way. I'm just saying that this is clearly confusing on whose decision this all is.
I did not read her email. It did not get to us by the time I was already signing on to this finance committee meeting and being prepared for that. I'm certainly willing to look at it and take it for what it's telling us, but the community grants appropriation is now in the hands of the finance committee to recommend. It can go to the council, and the council can totally re-scramble it in whatever way the majority of the council sees fit.
Okay, I just think we should give the review committee the responsibility and accountability that is inherent in the code, and I may just misunderstand the whole process. So thank you for listening.
Sheila,
may I? Yes. We had asked for information from Lynn, and that's what she sent us this morning. We had asked the members, who were the members of the committee. Lynn did not have the updated list from the committee. And, community grants may seem like a waste of time to some, but these are the organizations that help us in areas that we can't help ourselves. And so, yes, they deserve our time and attention and discussion. Lynn has sent us, I believe, descriptions of all of the nonprofits who have applied, and I think partially, if not totally, their actions. Did you whether
Sheila, you're breaking up.
Yeah, you're all choppy.
Sheila, we can't hear you. You're breaking up.
How how successful has the program been, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not questioning that. I'm just questioning the process. Clearly, I'm not questioning the intent of these grants at all. It is just the process.
The key
That's
is
all.
up.
Can I just jump in here if you don't mind?
Yeah, Sheila, we can't hear you. In fact, now we can't see you either. So I don't know what most of the last minute or so of your comments were to Ellie, but yes, go ahead, Lynn, please.
So, the review committee reads all of the grants. Then we have a deliberation meeting. We talk about the reports that those organizations that are currently funded submit. We, and so they read in detail the proposals. And as far as I understood it, they were making the recommendation to the council based on their grants management knowledge, their knowledge of the organizations, and what the organizations submitted as a proposal. And so they spend a great deal of time deliberating and studying the organizations. And so Fred's questions about, he's not sure about whether the program is successful and those kinds of things are all answered as a part of the grants review committee. So I think that if the level of trust is not there for the grants review committee, who are very well respected city staff people who manage and write grants for the city and are successful grant managers and grant writers, then maybe the finance committee should look at the process, because they spend a great deal of time reviewing and then deliberating themselves.
Lynn, let me interject here that I remember we've worked on this grant process over and over again over the years. And one of the things that we had requested is that the grantees give us, and this speaks to Fred's point, give us a quarterly update on their work. I have not seen any of those quarterly updates in a long, long time. Are we getting those quarterly updates? Because that speaks directly to Fred's question about performance by the grantees.
Yes, we get the quarterly updates. That is how the grantees get paid. I did not know that those quarterly reports are supposed to go to council members. Are they supposed to go to every single city council member?
Oh, we were supposed to, at least the finance committee was supposed to get a summary update. I mean, and the process has changed a lot over time. This has always been complicated. For a small amount of money, it has always leveraged a huge amount of time. I agree with Sheila's statement. This is a way that we can provide a community grant, a match, a local government match for all of these community organizations that do far more work than we could ever do within the city budget. And therefore, it is something that is important, and it does fill. In the county, they actually have functions like the health department and other social service departments. We don't, we're too small. This is our way of trying to fulfill that for our residents with our volunteers. And so it is not just a nuisance, it's something that's very important, and it does deserve time. I'm sorry that some of Ellie's constituents are finding us taking too much time.
No,
but this is something we've done every year in and year out.
You're not understanding it. What I'm saying is the process, and Lynn said it best. You have hours that have been involved in preparing this presentation to you. That's a lot of time. And it seems like the optics look like there's a lot of undoing once this presentation is made, and the intent, because I'm reading Lynn's email about, we shouldn't acknowledge requests that haven't been written and that kind of thing. So it's just the process. Of course, it's not the intent. So that's all I'm asking is just in the parking lot, maybe review the process and give this grant commission, their voice. And Lynn, let me know if I'm out of bounds here, but I think that's what you were trying to say.
So if your suggestion is that this be a parking lot issue for further examination after the budget is done, I welcome that. I think it's clear we need to have an understanding. There has been a dramatic change with the change in administration. There's different people on the committee. I wasn't really familiar with the change. And so I think we should always be looking at continuous improvement in the process. Let me recognize Dewan at this point because he's had his hand up patiently.
Yeah, thanks. I just had a quick question in regards to, once I figured today you guys will pass this so that we can move on. And once that is done, on the timeline for when the council is able to make adjustments to this.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand your question.
So once it is brought to the full council, when do you believe that we'll be able to make adjustments to it, as in where we like to see funding go and things like that?
Well, I'm hoping we can dispose of this today, but I'm beginning to get the feeling we may have to revisit this on our last meeting on Monday morning. But once it leaves, the Finance Committee is making recommendations. We do a deep dive into all of the budget, and we make recommendations for the benefit of the City Council. It is the City Council that approves or amends the mayor's proposed budget, and only the City Council. The Finance Committee cannot make changes to the mayor's budget in and of itself. We make recommendations. We're going to be offering 2 work sessions to the council, and that would be a good time for you to ask us about any of our recommendations. And hopefully you will come to those sessions and take advantage of it. You will see that reported in a more summary fashion in our report to the City Council that you'll get Monday night at the City Council meeting. And then there'll be time for council members to digest that and do their own budget analysis. And then the vote on the budget will start at least on the first meeting in June. Hopefully it will be completed in that meeting. Hopefully it'll be completed sometime before midnight, but often it's not completed until 4 in the morning.
I do think that in the process next year, I agree with Fred. Instead of, maybe just blanket notes jotted down on the side, I'd like to see the proof. I'd like to see the fact sheets, what these organizations are doing, how many kids they're helping or adults they're helping across our communities. And looking at some of the real numbers so that we can actually put the money where it is most needed.
I take that in the spirit it was offered, and certainly you will be able to make that same comment when this comes up before the council. Lynn, you have your hand up.
So I would recommend that you all look at the process again and make changes to the process, because if the City Council members want to review the grants, then the full grant proposals, then I'm not sure that it's worth having staff do make the same effort and then make a recommendation. So that, it just seems like it's an inefficient process if both staff and the council are looking at the grant proposals.
So that takes us full circle back to the days of Ellen Moyer, when in fact this was done by the City Council. It was usually done in the middle of budget deliberations for the vote on the appropriations budget, and that's why we formed the committee. And the notion was that the committee would do the review. We almost always got several people coming from these bodies to the public hearing session and making their plea at the public hearing. We changed this to a committee system so those people would come to the committee and make their plea. This year, the virtual system has kind of knocked that out of the anyway. But yes, of course, we always want to look at the processes and think about ways that we can improve. And I've heard that from Ellie, I've heard it from Dewan, and I think even the Finance Committee members think we need to go back and revisit it. But I would caution for all of the new members that this is nothing out of the ordinary for the Finance Committee or the council writ large. We have often made on the city council floor changes to grant appropriations. I can remember we did one for Rhonda one year, for Classy one year, Rhonda one year, and there's been adjustments. And the final authority to adjust this is with the council. So all the Finance Committee is doing is making its recommendations to the council after taking the work from the committee.
Ross.
Yes.
Sheila.
Yes.
Okay. While you're on the topic of the Finance Committee procedure, I just have a very quick question about something that happened earlier. So when you guys don't vote in favor of something, will we still have the opportunity to bring it up as a council and really push forward with it?
As of Monday night, after I give my comments and the Finance Committee hands its report over to the council, everything is in the hands of the council. Everything is open. It always has been. And usually it goes on forever and ever. We never do complete the budget vote on the first council meeting in June, or often don't. I think, well, first of all, there'll be an opportunity to discuss it in the second meeting in May, and it may be on the agenda then. We try to complete the budget appropriation votes the first meeting in June, primarily because we need to get the tax rate to the state so that they can promulgate it, but also we have to have it done in time for the 1st of July so that the budget can go into effect. So there will be two opportunities for the council to take this up. Second meeting in May, first meeting in June. It has carried over to the second meeting in June on time, but after Monday night, the Finance Committee just becomes 3 of 9 members of the City Council, and we're taking up the budget just like you do, all with equal powers.
Thank you.
Could I just add one more thing that maybe you could accomplish now is whether you can decide before it comes to council, so it doesn't open up another discussion, is whether or not you're going to accept applications or not, or use applications as the process in reviewing these. Those that haven't submitted an application, are you going to review them? Because that seems to be a point of contention, and you probably should decide that now in your report. So, you know, it's a very simple process question, because that came up in several examples. Just a suggestion.
May I, Ross? You're muted. You're muted.
Go ahead.
To Dewan, Alderman Gay, you could make recommendations to the Finance Committee about the community grants also. Even though we're getting close to the very end of our process, you could bring, or you could have brought your recommendations for consideration to the Finance Committee. The reality of the past is that the Finance Committee recommendations, for the most part, are followed by the council, because everybody's aware that the Finance Committee has done their investigative work. But changes are always made. With the community grants in this list, let me remind you that we haven't made a whole lot of changes from the committee's recommendations. And those changes that I made, and I was asked, as I am each year, to go through and look at them, I reach out to all the people and talk to them about what they had requested or what they didn't request. Organizations like the Film Festival, they're a different entity, and we can do whatever we want with them or without them, but we know that they're going to come back to us for support, because they are a citywide event that the city itself should be a sponsor with. I mean, you know, they need us to leverage sponsorship from the state and all kinds of other organizations. So, you know, I don't want us to make a blanket statement about anything, because all of these organizations are very different. The committee has done a great job and they laid the foundation for us, but that's what it is. And now it's in our hands to make decisions about these organizations. So, Mr. Chair, all that being said, I will make a motion that we support the 429.7 that's in Appendix A for community grants.
I understand that, and first of all, I'll second it so we can have discussion, and I really do. I think we have to get some kind of resolution or defer this till Monday, as I thought this was going to be a short meeting, but we're running out of time. We clearly can't do it in Appendix A unless we're approving Appendix A, and we're not seemingly ready to approve Appendix A. So I think it would have to be done as a separate action, approving this schedule that was submitted to us by the review committee, amended by the finance committee. Still doesn't add up to the full appropriations total. Sounds like we're going back to appropriating 80,000 for HACA, not 72,000. And we still don't add up, all of the pieces don't add up to the 429,700. So we don't have a complete document.
My motion was not that we approve Appendix A. I simply said as listed in Appendix A. So my motion is that we approve the total amount for community grants at 429.7. And I'll leave out the appendix part. And that gives us the flexibility to reallocate whatever dollars are left after all of the recommendations are done.
It gives us the flexibility until Monday night at 7 o'clock. I don't feel like we're handing a completed document. We don't have a document that we're giving the council that adds to the correct total.
Would you prefer a motion with the dollar amount being 425?
Well, I'm going to leave it up to the committee, but at this point, I would prefer a document that has allocations by grantee that add up to the appropriate total, be it 429,700 or 421,700, depending upon what we do with the HACA allocation. I'm comfortable with going back to the 80,000 to HACA, and if they don't use it all, it'll fall to, the remainder will fall to fund balance, and it just won't be spent. The other alternative, because we can't use that $8,000 to use it for any other grant money, it's just going to affect the total. If we leave the total at 429.7, that is expedient in that we don't have to muck around with the appropriations budget. We can just leave that at the 429,700. So I would
Mr. Chair, that was my motion.
But are you not going to include in that total a schedule that allocates it to the various grantees?
Right now, the total on the chart that was just up on the screen was 425. Okay? 8,000 of that was funding that we took out of the Housing Authority inspections because we're not doing those inspections at Newtown 20. We can put that money back in, and it takes us to 428.5, which means we still have $1,200 to reallocate. If you would prefer, reallocate it to winter relief. That's same group right there. It makes it easy. And then we come back to the 429.7. If you want a document which has all the exact numbers in it, that add up to 429.7.
Takia has her hand up. I want to ask a question to Fred. My preference, though, if you're asking me what my preference is to leave the number, no matter what the pieces are, leave the number at 429.7, so we don't have to muck around with that. My second preference is that we have an allocation that adds up to 429.7, and my presumption is that leaves HACA at the $80,000, and if they don't use it all because of Newtown 20, it just won't be used. It was not going to go to any other purpose, so it'll fall to fund balance. Fred, let me get you, but Takia, was there something we needed to address?
Yeah, I just had a question. Alderwoman Finlayson
You're on mute. You're on mute, Takia.
Sorry. I had a question, Alderwoman Finlayson, on the chart that we just had up. There is $8,000 allocated to winter relief. However, there is a star beside it. Is that not part of the 425,000?
It is. And I put that asterisk there because that was one of the changes. I didn't make a notation and I didn't put an asterisk beside anything else. But that was one of the changes the committee made to increase that amount from 7,500 to 8,000. But my motion, Mr. Chair, is exactly what you just said, is that we recommend approval of the 429.7. And we can add back in the 8,000 for HACA, and that leaves us with $1,200 to reallocate somewhere else.
Ross?
Yes, Duan.
I want to kind of, just going off of what Sheila said, I'd like to make this recommendation to the committee prior to bringing it up in the full council. But I'd like to see if we could figure out some way to get $3,000, as I mentioned in the first meeting when we went over this, to the Peninsula Athletic League, PAL, where, you know, so many of our kids participate at. And I'd like to get those scholarships sent out to students in our city.
I want to use my prerogative as the chair to say, I want to defer this till Monday when we can have a schedule that adds to 429.7. Frankly, Duan, while I appreciate your desire for that, I think I would like to see that deferred to discussion at the city council. I'm going to ask Fred at this point. You're not comfortable with this because there's three groups that are being given money that didn't apply. I'm wondering if we even have a positive vote for this community grants at this point, and that maybe we ought to defer action on this till Monday just so we can get some of these things sorted out. You're on mute. Fred? You're on mute.
Yep, sorry. It's okay by me. I mean, I did not expect my comment to engender nearly as much conversation as it did. At any rate, it's fine with me. I don't have much else to say. I've already said what I had to say, and I've got questions. As you know, I always have questions about the amount we're giving in this section, and whether we ought to be doing it. So I don't know that I'll be voting for it one way or in favor of it one way or the other. But I just think I had a hard time explaining to my constituents how the city in financial difficulties is giving money away to people who didn't even apply for it.
I'll only note that that is not without precedent and actions by both the Finance Committee and the City Council. A City Council you were part of, I'll remind you that we did that once for Classy and once for Rhonda, and it is the prerogative of the council to decide to do that, and also to change or reallocate the individual amounts of money. I can remember another year where we decided to add more to We Care and Friends. So none of this is out of the ordinary. Some of this is because we have new members that haven't been exposed to this sausage making. But I guess my sense is that I would really prefer to defer till Monday when we can come back with a schedule. And again, my preference, a schedule that adds to 429.7. We have one of those, which is the one that was initially submitted by the committee. I think there's a sense that we want to make some recommended adjustments to that. I just want to get it to where the pieces add to the total.
Mr. Chair, there is a motion on the floor that says that we will approve $429,700 for community grants.
Is there a second?
You already seconded it.
All right. Are we ready? I'm not going to vote for it, Sheila, not until we have a
Okay,
schedule.
that's fine. There's a vote on the floor. You cannot ignore that.
So, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. All right. I recommend we defer this to Monday's meeting. We can write the report around it, assuming that there'll be $429,700, the distribution of which is not yet firmed up.
Mr. Chair, I am just so confused because this motion does exactly what you said. And then, okay, just push something else off until Monday.
Well, I thought we just voted.
We did. We voted it down.
Yeah. We're going to reconsider on Monday? I mean, I suppose we can, but I think we just voted it here.
Okay. Next.
Alderman Payon, you didn't vote against the community grants. You voted against Sheila's motion. So you don't have to reconsider it on Monday. You didn't vote against community grants. You just voted against Sheila's motion. Alderwoman Finlay's motion.
Which was
the dollar.
Which was the dollar amount that's included in Appendix A.
Thought it was in general. Okay.
No.
All right.
And my vote no was I agree with the 429.7. I just want to see what the pieces are, the amounts for the pieces that add up to that. I'm not clear. Clearly, the pieces, even in your submission, Sheila, don't add to 429.7. It seems to me we're going back to an appropriation to the Housing Authority of $80,000. If not, we have to change the 429.7 to something less $8,000. And that still doesn't add to the 421.7. It adds to 420,500. So there's that amount of money that needs to be parked somewhere. So I'm totally in favor of the community grants. I would be in favor of more money for community grants. I would be in favor of entertaining the kinds of things that Dewan is talking about. And I'm certainly in favor of putting in the parking lot for the Finance Committee, future things to do, re-examining this whole process. It clearly has been not satisfactory or smooth, and we've got to figure out why and deal with that. But my sense is we need a schedule that adds to the appropriate total, which in my mind is 429,700.
Mr. Chair, I will work on this and send it to you today.
I appreciate that very much. And I thought you would do nothing less than that. So, all right, look, there's a moose on the table, folks. We still have to take a vote on the Finance Committee recommendation on Ordinance 16-20. I'm not sure that we have a consensus on that ordinance. I do know that we have taken a position of taking no position on Section 1. I think that we can vote for the rest of it and have a recommendation to the council that says that we recommend the ordinance, but take no position on Section 1, which includes Appendix A. And we can even put notes in the report, depending upon where our comfort level ends up, telling them why we didn't take position on Section 1 of the ordinance. But I would like to take a position on the ordinance overall, noting that exception. Yes, Sheila.
I will make a motion that the Finance Committee approves Ordinance 1620, Sections 2 through 29. Period.
Is there a second? Hearing none from Fred, I will second that motion. I would like to ask the city attorney, if he's still with us, what your sense of what that motion means. And I see Takia has her hand up.
Yeah, the motion means that the committee recommends approval of a budget inclusive of the line items included in sections 2 through 29.
And that's the intent of the motion, right, Sheila?
That's my motion.
All right. Takia, you have your hand up.
Well, I'm confused. Would this motion negate everything else that you've done? Because you went through and voted for them individually or not voted for. I know there were a few that Alderman Payon did not vote for as well. So if you voted for them section by section,
if it passed, it supersedes everything that
it was exactly.
I don't have a problem with that because we're approving everything. We did approve everything 2 through 29. There wasn't a unanimous vote on some portions of it, and I respect that. And I think that Alderman Payon will address that, and we can do it in the report, or he can do it on the floor of the council. But I believe if we pass this, we will have moved on all of the legislation. We will Monday move on the last outstanding piece, which is being handled separately, which is the community grants, which I think 2 out of the 3 of us agree is to be at the level of $429,700. And we'll get that allocation so it all adds up. I think we do need to take an action on the pay schedule, even though it's in force now. I think we need to at least acknowledge that there is a pay schedule in force, wherever that got off to. The title of that is Pay Scale Effective July 1st, 2019, July 1st, 20, and Proposed Fiscal Budget 21. But before we get into that, I want to go ahead and have any further discussion on the motion on the floor. And if there is no more, take a vote. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to recommend approval of 1620 sections 2 through 29 signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Nay. All right, the motion carries. The question I have for Takia is, are there any outstanding pieces of legislation that the committee needs to vote on?
No, you voted on all 3 pieces of the legislation.
All right. Is it the sense of the committee that we have to do anything additionally going department by department? Because that's what appendices A does. I don't know if we can't agree on appendices A, I'm not sure how we can go through and vote department by department for their appropriations, because those are the appropriations in appendices A.
Mr. Chair, what's the downside if we don't vote department by department?
None. It's just that we won't include that in the report.
Okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with us saying that we support the budgets as proposed by each of the departments. It's not the budget so much as how it's funded that becomes our issue.
So I have a notion on how to finesse this, which is that we can have a section in the report, which I've already started to write, that acknowledges the department's presentation to us, acknowledges our appreciation for the fact that they honored our request to use the performance management system, touts some of the really exemplary reports that we got, in my view, which were Public Works, Finance, and Planning and Zoning, but also recognizes individually each of the other departments' reports for the quality of their report. And because I don't want all of their hard work to go unacknowledged by us, and therefore when we acknowledge it, we bring it to the attention of the council. Some council members have seen a lot of that, others have seen none of it. So I think in the report we can go through department by department and talk about in very cursory general terms that we heard from them and that we appreciated what we heard from them. Does that make sense to Sheila and Fred?
Okay.
Yeah.
See the draft.
I just would like for us to be as succinct in our description as possible.
That's your job, Sheila. I just write it.
I know, and I'm working on it too.
All right. Takia, is there, committee, we did talk about, and I wanted to get a sense of the committee, the offer of 2 work sessions put on by the Finance Committee for council members that wanted to take advantage of that. And the notion that was put forth this morning was 1 during the day and 1 at night. We would have to schedule that. As Fred said, people can participate or not. And we've had a lot of participation, certainly from Ellie, and for a good part of this from Dewan, and the early part of this from Rob. I talked with Rob. He's been swamped with work things, but he's been torturing himself by watching the video, and he hasn't gotten to May yet, but he is watching it. I don't know where Mark and Rhonda are, and that's their business, but I thought we could make the offer. If the council wants to take advantage of it, fine. If they don't, we get some time off. Is that a sense of the committee?
It's fine with me.
All right. I don't know, do we need a motion?
I don't think so.
No, all right. Do we have anything else? I thought we would finish really early today, but we're still 2 minutes early in our time allotment. Is there any other, Dewan? Oh, Sheila first.
Mr. Chair, if you recall, we were asked to attend the COVID meeting on Wednesday. Well, that's been changed to Thursday at 2:00, I think.
All right, so will we get a notice?
Yeah, you should get an invitation.
All right. There was a couple of outstanding issues on the parking lot. One was the Office of Emergency Policy. I thought we would address that in our recommendations to the council in the report. And that recommendation from the committee was that if the majority of the council agrees to it, that the budget be recast to recognize the current organizational structure in place, which is with the Office of Environmental Policy, rather than the redistribution to the city manager and the planning and zoning. But I think that's just a recommendation in the report.
Mm-hmm.
It's already in the report. I can't think of anything else.
I've got one thing that my wife put a note in front of me during the meeting, and she suggested that we move that we have a local day of mourning for the day that Nordstrom closes permanently in the Annapolis Mall in August.
Is it closing?
Amen.
Too many people talking. Is it closing?
Yes, permanently. My wife also couldn't understand why she didn't get a day off from school the day it opened, 20 years ago.
Well,
Oh my God.
First time I walked in with her, every clerk we passed said, "Hi, Ann. Hi, Ann. Hi, Ann." And it hasn't slowed down.
I've only bought my
Also,
Christmas cards there.
I want to recognize Dewan and Ellie before we close, but I want to take note that once again, we managed to exceed our allotted time.
Yeah, just quickly. The cuts that you voted down earlier, was that already written, or is that something that has to be rewritten when brought back before the council?
I don't know what are you referring to?
When you
I don't think we
voted
voted down anything.
Before we voted down
I thought there were 2 no's and 1 yes.
Or what?
When you
Are you
voted
talking-
for the pay cuts, for the 5% cuts.
We did not accept that motion. That does not mean that it can't be part of the recommendations from the Finance Committee as a minority report or brought up on the floor of the council as an alternative. My sense is that, we've got to be very careful to not get in the way of the city administration negotiating. And I think that the city attorney has advised us that proposal has so many legal complications to it, and also has an unknown amount attached to it. So, we don't know what that would come out to. It may not amount to much of anything. It may be more than we need to balance the budget, which doesn't bother me, but still, we have no information, and we do not have any more time for the Finance Committee. It can be brought up again Monday as we close out our business, but
is that in writing somewhere? Is the question? I just wanted to be able to see it in writing and look over it.
not that I know of. Ask Alderman Payon.
Yeah, I didn't submit it in writing. Whichever in the minutes we're going to have to go by. I will. You haven't heard the end of that, believe me.
Thank you.
That last statement was a warning to Jody. I guess that means that if it's in the offing and there does seem to be some support, we may need to be prepared to make some sort of estimate. But I would really caution that we better get strong advice from the city attorney before we step on those grounds.
So while we have been meeting these last 2 hours, I did come up with, are you talking about the pay reduction for exempt employees?
Yes.
What do you, so a 5%, actually it wouldn't be 5%, it'd be only effective for half the year. So the annual effect on the budget would be 65,600.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So-
I can give you the details of that, and then you could add FICA on that, which gets you to 70. And that's the annual impact. It's not that much.
So let's let the city attorney, please, Mike, keep us from straying on forbidden territory.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily forbidden. I just think that when you say pay, it's not easy to just say pay and only look at one category. Pay includes pay and benefits. So we've got to be careful about ascribing to pay just one category. This is a large sliver, and I'd like to take some time, step back, and maybe assist with some legal research so that we can define it better. I'm not sure. So let me give you an example. If pay includes pay and benefits, which I believe it does, and there's already a 7.5% cut to an employer contribution, is that not already a 5% cut to salaries of people who get those 401A plans, for instance? I believe with some research to support it that you already have your 5% cut, and then there's a number that associates. So if you add another 5%, you're now at an 11.5% cut, in my view. And so we got to be careful that we're it's apples to apples in the word pay and then cut for the appropriate amount of folks.
So
May I ask?
Thank you for that advice. And I do want to remind you that you and Trish have promised us some further elaboration on the 401A. I've heard the city manager, I will recognize you in a second, Sheila, the city manager suggesting that we may want to re-examine that whole program anyway. Not sure that's for the budget, but I am definitely welcome a reevaluation. I was truly shocked to learn that this was instituted in 1992. I mean, it's been around for a long time. No idea why it was started, what the thinking was, how it was implemented. Was it a city council action? Was it done apparently by resolution? Because I can't find it in code, so I don't think it's done by ordinance. But there's a lot more information to know about that, and I think a lot to be heard. I am getting to a point of comfort with what the city manager has said to us often and again today, which is we're passing a budget that, as Ellie has put it, is full of all kinds of uncertainty. It's a budget that has $6.3 million in grants, which we have no idea whether we're going to get that amount or more or less. And the budget we're passing is an appropriation budget, which is a definite amount of money that has to be met, and how it gets met during the year can change and probably will change. And so I'm focusing more on the appropriation level than I am on how we get there. I have been on record, and I still feel that we shouldn't recognize things that we can't recognize, but I am more of a mind to get into this mode of we're passing an appropriation amount, and how we get to that is going to change all throughout the year. We have all kinds of finance committee adjustments that we make all during the year, recognizing new monies, reallocating monies within the budget, and these can be things that are no different than that. So I really wish we could come to a resolution of the budget, but if we can't in the finance committee, we will have to in the city council. So Sheila had her hand up, and David, did you have something to say?
I had a quick question for Mr. Lyles. Should we be using the terminology salaries versus benefits? That's how it's listed in the budget documents. And that would clearly delineate between, their pay and all the extras. And I suspect that this 401A would fit under the benefits category.
Yes, to a degree. You're probably more specific by saying the salary, base salary, as a term that gets at the base salary and the pay plan separate apart from benefits. So
you're breaking up, Mr. Lyles. Could you repeat?
The basic term is base salary.
Base salary, okay. Thank you. So that's what we should be using, gentlemen.
Right. So the bottom line for me on all of this discussion is, in some way or another, we're looking for a reduction to some or all in the level of pay. And this proposal is a legitimate proposal. I don't know that it is implementable legally, but it is consistent with what city manager had proposed, that we make reductions in pay as well as reductions in non-pay and across the board in the approach that he had proposed. This, doing it for the exempt employees, is much more focused and may or may not be legal, but it does sound, from what Jody told us just now, not going to be a very big hit. It's not going to get us to where we need to be to balance the budget. David.
I guess I would just mention, once an engineer, always an engineer. I like numbers. So the way percentages work, because I hear it loud and clear that there's interest in the higher paid employees paying more of this cut than others. And that's the way a percentage works. So if you think about it this way, somebody that makes $30,000 with the proposal that we put forward, they would, their give would be $450. Somebody that makes $100,000, their give would be $1,500. Somebody that makes $150,000, their give would be $2,250.
David, we didn't hear the first number you said. Your voice broke up. On the $30,000 example, we didn't hear that.
Yeah, so if you make $30,000, what your loss next year would be $450, because it would be half of the 3% COLA that they were supposed to get. If you make $100,000, it would be $1,500. So and $150,000, $2,250. So the higher pay employees, just by virtue of it being a percentage, necessarily would see a greater loss in salary than the lower pay employees. Just for what it's worth, just so you have that in mind. That's how percentages work. If the base is higher, then the amount that's given up is higher.
Jill, I thought you had your hand up. David, thank you for that. And it does put it in perspective. And I think that it carries the notion over that we are asking for some give on the salaries and benefits side to balance the budget, just like we're asking for the supplies and training and so forth. And these dollar amounts put it in a very nice perspective. I think that it speaks to what I've heard Dewan and Fred speak to, which is that they're looking for a heavier contribution from the higher paid people. This is clearly that as well. But for me, the bottom line is, the principle is that we're looking for some reduction in pay in addition to some reduction in non-pay to help meet the budget. And we're talking about a budget of what is the total amount on the budget? $70,000. We're talking about much less than 1%, $680,000 plus $160,000 out of a budget of whatever the total is. And so we're not really talking about out of a budget of $46,000. I know the other thing we didn't talk about was page 37 and 38, but maybe I'll just do that with Jody. Out of 146 $7,000 budget, we're talking about less than $1 million. So, very small percent, 0.15% of the total budget. Dewan, you have your.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
No. Can you hear me?
I hear you. Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm just saying in one of my all-time favorite plays, Hamilton, Aaron Burr or Alexander Hamilton has a good line to Burr where he says, "If you stand for nothing, Burr, what will you fall for?" So I'm going to take the lead, and I'm going to start with the 5% from my salary.
Can I have it?
Yeah, can we divide it up 7 ways?
8.
Well,
that's an interesting gesture, but I think when you take 5% of our salary, you're talking about pennies, not dollars. We have, I think, really exhausted this meeting. Is there any other business? Jody, I keep looking at pages 37 through 39. I want to understand them. I think I do. I may be the only one in the world other than you that is interested in that. So I'll just have a offline discussion unless the Finance Committee wants to put that on the agenda for Monday.
Alderman, if you go back to the first meeting that the Finance Committee held, and I was going through the budget book, I believe I spoke, if you're talking about the unduplicated appropriations, I believe I spoke to that schedule for a few minutes. So I don't know if it would help to go back and look at that as well.
Yeah, I will admit to you, I did not commit that first meeting to memory. I will go back and try to find that, probably with the help of Takia, but I may still have some questions. It looks interesting. I think I understand it, but I want to be sure. And I do think that it's something that we should reference in our report to the council writ large because it's in the budget book. What the approach I'm taking with the report is that I'm trying to guide the rest of the council through the budget book. And we're trying to tell them about all the extra information that we've received from you and the rest of the administration during our deliberations, and making it so that they could use the budget book as a place where they can go to get up to speed to the extent that they're not, and to the extent that they want to get up to speed. So so I do think that we need to have a mention of that in the report, and I want to work on that. Right. Sheila.
Mr. Chair, along with the unduplicated appropriations, if you look on page 39, there's like 13 notes that help to explain those amounts, those proposed budget amounts. So that's very helpful, I thought.
Yeah, I know, and that's why I said pages 37 through 39. I've read the notes. I haven't totally mastered them, but I did want to make sure that I understood them because I do want to put them in the report. Is there any other business before the committee? Alderman Payon.
I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second that emotion.
All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.